Okay, this is another part of my Burning Heaven setting, and I will go on to the next race. They're called the Kerbara. The Kerbara are a very focused and patient people, and are masters of concentration. They suffer through pain and ridicule with the stoic wisdom of a rock. Kerbara are omnivores, but prefer eating plants and fungi over meats and breads. They live in semi-arid plains country, and cold does not bother them like other races. They have a very sweet-tasting blood that is prized by the animals that tend to make the unfortunate Kerbara their food. Their appearance: they have a cartilaginous exoskeleton on the outside with soft innards on the inside. This exoskeleton is soft at birth and is solid by the time they are considered adults. The rough and jagged exoskeleton also changes color during the life of every Kerbara, with children being mostly gray, adults being gray with a gold hue, and the elders being black with only hints of gold in their coloring. They have solid black eyes with flecks of gold in them. They're basically immune pretty much to cold and some like puncturing weapons, but they take more damage against fire and slashing weapons. Yeah, they basically have like a tough exoskeleton, so depending on what system you use, maybe they get a bonus to armor class, something like that. The Kerbara culture involves them in a lot of semi-arid plains country, and they tend to be nomadic in their lifestyle, albeit a slow nomadic lifestyle. They will live in an area for a brief period of time of up to 1 year, but then they will gather everyone and make a trek to their next destination, wherever the Council of Elders deems to take them. It is said that the meditations of the elders are sometimes rewarded with visions and omens as well. The places they prefer to live are, like I said, in the semi-arid plains country, but they can sometimes be found in places that have gentle rolling hills. Their clothing and decoration: clothing is not worn by them, but they do on occasion paint their exoskeletons with somber colors and with phrases that amuse them, or that they think are worthwhile to share with friends and strangers alike. The paintings on the exoskeletons are normally very intricate and take many hours and sometimes days to finish. They take pride in this art. Some will also chip patterns into their exoskeletons, which is akin to tattoos that other humanoids get on their skin. Their demeanor: almost all of them dedicate time out of every day to calm themselves and to ponder, which they call Gestag Deg, the meaning of existence, and they pretty much just think about existence and listen to their inner being when they basically just meditate, which they claim will lead them closer to the divine beings. While not a religious people in terms of ritual and observances, they do ponder and pay homage to the gods in their own quiet and self-reflecting way. They are known to be patient and kind, and will forgive many wrongs done to them in an attempt to promote the overall well-being of the world. They prefer to use martial arts over weapons, but will use them when forced to defend their current homelands from violent enemies. And one caveat to this race: the guy that made it basically said that he was thinking about roasting marshmallows over a fire, and that's where their color comes, and that's like the exoskeleton is like the outside of the marshmallow. So I thought that was kind of funny. The next race is the Lumstrous. They live their lives burrowing through the ground, making a confusion mass of 1-foot wide tunnels, with the occasional living chamber. All the nutrition they need is supplied by the dirt they burrow through. While most of them choose to live a Spartan lifestyle, this doesn't mean that they are simple, unintelligent creatures. Lumstrous are good metalsmiths and apply themselves to a wide range of crafts. One of their achievements is a special alloy called flector that lets the weapons made of it bend and still retain their original shape. Some of their favorite weapons are thin, razor-sharp swords, whips, and anything flexible enough for them to have and still burrow with. Lumstrous also make throwing stars and other blunt weapons out of this same metal, and they're usually solitary, but when Lumstrous make communities, they are usually small, consisting of 10 to 20 individuals. So picture lots of small villages rather than cities and towns underground. But occasionally, more do gather in one place. For some unknown reason, Lumstrous have not learned how to use any sorts of magic in the standard sense of the word, but they are good with inscribing runes on things and rituals and charms. They will never reveal this rune magic to any other race. Even an evil and enslaved Lumstress will refuse to share their secrets with another race, even just for selfish reasons. Their appearance, they're a strange race of worm-like humanoids. They have very tubular body, about 8 inches in diameter, with 2 tentacle-like arms that end in 2 fingers and an opposing digit. They have no legs, but they crawl on the ground like a snake, with their torso upright when on the surface. Lumstress have a leathery exoskeleton that provides them some protection from attacks. They are a completely hairless race, and they have strange-looking, abnormally shaped black eyes that don't see very well, because they're used to crawling around in the dark. Some of their special abilities, they're invertebrates, so sometimes that can be a bonus, sometimes not. They can kind of see through vibrations, but their regular eyesight is not that great. And they're very quick when they're tunneling in the ground. Going to go about the Lumstress culture. Lumstress that live in larger areas have adapted to living together and helping each other. They don't have a monetary system for their culture yet, so everyone is expected to pull their own weight with the chores, and they also use lots of bartering. If someone doesn't do this work, they may be exiled. Lumstress rune masters are trained from birth in their secret runic arts and tend to put more ranks in those sorts of skills. Like I said, they do not cast spells in the normal fashion, but they do study how to carve runes and make sure that they work correctly. There are some of the Lumstress that are considered wanderers, and they make up about 40% of the population. They live as lonely hermits throughout the world and tend to explore in areas that no other Lumstress would go. These would probably be the best for including in a party, because they've probably encountered some other races in their wanderings. They can be found up to a mile below ground, these hermits, these wanderers. They prefer to have their own system of tunnels that can be accessed from any nearby caves or surface routes. They live alone, and even if one finds a mate, they will usually live apart but close to each other. So picture like an old couple that has 2 separate beds and 2 different rooms. That's kind of how they view things in their culture. For locations, it's mostly underground, but they can live in natural caves, natural rock formations, but they always have access to underground tunnels. Most of them do not wear clothing, except for maybe leather straps that hold equipment. Any equipment they have on them will tend to fit closely to their body and will be flexible. Sometimes they will paint their bodies for decoration. Sometimes they carve runes into their flesh. Again, with the rune master and the rune magic. And any sort of jewelry they have on them will make sure it's durable and able to stay with them in their travels. Because if you picture trying to move through a tunnel that's a foot in diameter, things have to be pretty close to you. Let's see here. There's lots of different personalities. Sometimes the noise of strangers is kind of drives them crazy, kind of like the nails on a chalkboard. They tend to live in quiet society, and even when they talk, they tend to be kind of hushed in tones. Sometimes they're grouchy, especially with outsiders, and anyone that invades their tunnels find that they are hostile and aggressive when confronted. But for the most part, they're not that way in their normal dealings with other races. The next race has several subraces. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the subraces, but I'm going to go through the main qualities of the race itself. The Mer-Giron lore of their origins does not contain the typical fall from paradise or corruption story. They continue to live as they were originally created. This does not mean that they are free from corruption, but rather only an individual falls from grace. When an individual falls into corruption, not being confused with making a mistake, but rather intentionally committing an evil act, they lose the ability to procreate and will not pass on their flawed genetics. Sufficiently, evil acts such as the murder of another Mer-Giron is punished with death in addition to natural consequences. All Mer-Giron have the ability to ascend to dragonhood by following the threefold way, S. Kigiri, but only a few take the ritual of the way, cool Kagiri, and even fewer accomplish the feat. The threefold way has 3 developmental goals: honor, courage, and wisdom, that do not have to be achieved in any particular order. It typically takes a practitioner centuries to achieve such a goal. At each goal, the practitioner of the way comes closer to ascension. The first goal manifests as a physical change in the Maragiri as they take on a humanoid draconian form, including wings which can be used to glide but not fly. The second goal grants the ability to fly. Barasgiri can now take off while launching from an elevated place. The last goal grants full ascension, where they complete their physical transformation to draconic form and gain a breath weapon. The change to draconian form grants the special abilities of the new draconian form while retaining the previous special abilities and other racial traits from their previous Meragirim form. So they continually to work into this form of like ascension, and it's part of their culture and part of their race. The Meragirim have 4 major subraces with distinctive clans within each subrace. And that's like, there's lots of information for this race. I'm not going to go entirely into it, but I'm going to just kind of hit the topics. All Meragirim are immune to naturally occurring temperatures and do not usually wear clothing. Clothing that is worn is usually a mark of social or professional status. Typically, only one piece of clothing is worn, such as a cloak, a cape, or something similar. Jewelry is much more prevalent and also an indicator of social or professional status. All Meragirim can change the color of the skin on their face to reflect current emotional states, and can be controlled with some concentration. Some are obviously better than others at doing this. Colors range from the natural green-grayish to red for anger, blue for contentment and pride, or brown, embarrassment or sexual desire. Lifespan. They tend to live for about 1,000 to 1,200 years old. When Meragirim ascends to the full form, their life basically begins again. Children reach adulthood about the age of 100. So there are different sub-races. There's the Meragirim, the Barasgiri, which is basically the flying ones. There are the Orugiri, which are the footed ones. There are the Kalagiri. They're sort of like the big hunting ones, sort of like raptors. There are the Basgiri. They're the little hunting ones, like small raptors. And then there are the Giri-Kur, the changed ones. This is like their full elevation to draconian status. And there's more information on the different types and different things that they have. But if you really just think of the various like dragon/dinosaurs, you get a pretty good idea of what each of them possibly could do. And there's more information on the website about that. Okay, the Meragirim culture live in numerous areas, from urban to rural, but they tend to like to live on the outskirts of sort of like the wildlands, or very rough and rugged lands, places with danger and plenty of animals to eat and to feed upon. They are very defensively minded. They'll have moats and walls around their towns. They prefer to wear little clothing and will decorate themselves according to local traditions. Sometimes they will be affected by other races or cultures that are nearby, and whatever styles those are, they will adopt. Like I said, they follow the threefold way, and they have this sort of changing structure to their bodies after a period of time, and this slow transformation will lead them to become a dragon. So they're very long-goaled and long-term minded. They don't usually think about the short term. And there really isn't too much more for their culture. That's pretty much it. The next race of beings is the Minkaku. They claim to be the only thing in the world that can think for themselves. Of course, they haven't interacted much with the other intelligent races as of yet, and they are very xenophobic. Their appearance: the Minkaku are thin, wispy, and seemingly made of shadows. They are slightly insubstantial and semi-ethereal. They have a vague outline and resemble churning shadows. They exist in 2 dimensions at once, being partially substantial in both the Sargisu, the plane of shadow, and the material plane. They have a shadowy humanoid form, though with thought and concentration they can slowly change their form into similar forms. This ability to slowly change is called morphing. They form The form that they turn into has to be humanoid in shape and of roughly the same size as their original form. Whatever shape they change into, however, they appear to be just as insubstantial and semi-ethereal as they normally are. So if they wanted to look at like a minotaur, for instance, they could be the shadowy form of a minotaur, but it would be made of shadows. They do not tread on the ground, but instead hover and drift inches above the ground. They also have the same ability above water, so they don't need to swim. They can move just as fast as a normal humanoid with this form of movement. They have large, vibrant green eyes with horizontal orange slits. It is their eyes that seem to stand out from the rest of their bodies, for they seem to be the most substantial part of them. They, like I said, have that morphing ability where they can change slowly over time, within D10 minutes, something like that. They're very quiet because they don't actually touch the ground when they move, and they normally have the ability to see things that others can't see. They can see invisible things and hidden things up to roughly 30 feet away. The Minkaku are a race of philosophers and thinkers. They prefer preparation over rash action. They are a smart race, but they prefer the balance of nature over any outside control of it. They don't allow magic, for they see this as manipulating and controlling a natural force, and have a punishment of death for any would-be practitioners. There are those that do practice magic, however, in secret meeting places when others aren't watching. Generally, adventurers are those that practice magic and flee their homeland in search of places that don't hate spellcasters. There are many conclaves of philosophers and think tanks that contemplate the whim of any gods or the lack thereof. Many of the Minkuku, or Kaku, are atheists and feel that creation came about by random chance, with no one at the wheel except maybe the whims of a force called chaos. Even when denying the existence of the gods, the Minkaku have a very structured moral codes, like a system of moral codes that are passed down by tradition. There are several conclaves, however, that question these traditions and want to make new ones, or modify the old ones that have been passed down from the beginning. For their preferred locations, most of them prefer to live in the foothills of mountains or on the shoreline, but they can really live anywhere. They normally do not wear clothing, except when they are in cold climates. Adventurer wear, armor, things like that, but they usually cost twice as much because they need special materials that will hold it in place because of their sort of ethereal nature. There's some rare minerals and rare things that you can make armor out of that would be able to stay in place. Their culture is one that emphasizes thought and thorough understanding of how the natural world works. And that's pretty much it. Just picture a shadowy bunch of philosophers and smart guys.